I know, as I said, we've talked about this in the past, and it is one of those things that I really look up to you for, and that I've seen is so unique about what God is doing in you. And I want to give you the opportunity, because I want to learn what is going on with it. But basically, like, you have this unique freedom that the Lord talks about in like Galatians 5. It's like, for freedom Christ has set us free. Those who are free are free indeed. And I don't see very many people living with that kind of freedom to not have shame about the joy that they have, to not have shame about being around the people that they want to be with, and loving the Lord and loving life and enjoying it. So whatever you want to share, like, where did that come from? Like, what inspired this? How did you get to that place? And I know it's a long journey.
What inspired it was the life of Christ. And I'll unpack that a little more. First of all, thank you. That's a very humbling thing to hear. You might be surprised to hear that I don't feel most days like I'm very free. I know, I guess the closer people get to me, the more I bet they probably would share the same thing. And maybe that's typically all of us. I had my mentor, guy who led me to faith, helped me grow, discipled me through college, used to joke with me all the time. He'd look at me and he'd squeeze his fist and he'd go, and this was like when I was 19, he'd be like, "Hey, stop gripping." And he would tell me that every day I saw him. I'd be like walking away from like a meal with him, and he'd go, "Hey, brother, stop gripping. What are you gripping on today?" And he was like, and he would just constantly open his fist to me and be like, "Hey, just hold it loosely." And so, maybe like years of trying to let go of some things as best as I can. I really don't feel many days I am as free. I will say there is a part of my spirit and who I am that I just feel the more I get older, the less, and this is going to sound so arrogant, even saying it, I don't care what people a lot of days think of my perception of Jesus and how I live and operate. It's got me in a lot of trouble. It's got me into a lot of trouble. It's got a lot of pushback. Some people say it's intimidating. Some people say I'm giving you a lot of the negative side of it. Some people don't want to like being friends with it because I spent so long, Chase, in my life, like especially when I was working for Passion and Passion Conference, Passion City Church. It was a very public role. I was a college pastor there, young adult pastor. It's a very public role, and everybody was watching you. And it was a very social media driven culture, and every little thing I did felt scrutinized, for good or for bad. And I think I just went over the edge when I left. And when I did resign, and love Louie and Passion and everybody. There's amazing people. They're friends. I would do anything for them still. But it taught me a lot about my insecure self at the time. And my insecure self that had a magnifying glass on it genuinely spent so much energy worried about people were going to think of me. And the more I read about Jesus, the more I saw was a man that was incredibly misunderstood, incredibly misrepresented, and I think to this day still the most misrepresented and misunderstood human to ever walk the face of this earth. One day they're praising him. The next they're sawing off the leg of the stool that he stands on. And I've been a pastor for 8 years. I was a pastor for 8 years. Yeah. And that was my experience as a pastor. One day I'm getting praised, and another day I'm getting knocked off the stool. And so you get to this point where you go, God has made me, for whatever reason, some way, that I like to challenge things, and I like to speak up on things that people won't speak about. And I think living that way has allowed me to live freer, because I just kind of go, we joke about the cancellation thing earlier. I'm like, okay, so cancel me. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen to me? Probably some hard things. But at the same time, like, there's a level of like having this sense of like, I'm saying what I want to say. I'm meaning what I'm wanting to mean. I'm being with the people I want to be with. I'm unafraid of what everyone's going to think if I post this, do this, be that. You know, I mean, I've been around some amazing people in my life, people that a lot of people know. And I used to have a fear of talking about that because, they're all going to think that I'm bragging or I'm egotistical. And guess what?
Yeah.
They all thought I was bragging and I'm egotistical. Not all, but a lot of people did.
Yeah.
I can't control it. But what I can control and what I can do is I know my relationship with God. I have the Spirit of God. I know what He's convicting me of. I have a small circle of close-knit people around me, and the Spirit is tested by two things that I know about: Scripture and other believers who are following Scripture.
Their witness and testimony.
Their witness and testimony. So therefore, I got people that I do let call me out. And sometimes they're like, chill, bro. Like, you need to delete that, or you should not do that. And I've gotten myself in trouble at times where I've gotten let go from things but then again, I go, there are times and there's seasons, there's places. The difference, I think, in my maturity, I hope and pray to God, the older I get, the more I'm able to figure out what's a mountain and a molehill, to figure out how to be free and operate in this way, to continually be unafraid to be continually unafraid to live what I believe with conviction God is telling me to do. Yeah. And I do genuinely, with everything in me, Chase, believe He doesn't make me just to endure this world. He made me to enjoy it, enjoy the people, and be a light. So it's probably a really long-winded answer to your question. I just want to not be afraid of other people. And I think the Spirit, it says in Scripture, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. So for me, going back to the Spirit again, everything's about hearing and responding to that voice. And if I do, I feel like it lets me be more in my best days, which, by the way, today's not one of them. Coming up that highway earlier wasn't one of them. But in my best days, it's when I'm less about the self and more in the Spirit. And when I'm operating more and listening to that voice and responding to it immediately, that tends to be where I tend to operate in this freedom, that this lack of care of what everybody else around me thinks of me or is going to, I hope that answers some of it.
Yeah, bro, definitely. And I think maybe something that, I don't know if these two connect, and maybe even if me bringing this up and you thinking about it connects them in your mind, like, that'd be cool. But I feel like there's something in your conflict resolution skills and your ability to have those and the maturity of those in you that I've seen that allow you to be able to, like, even just take little risk and just be free. There is, like, this saying that's really resonated with me a lot recently of, like, we can't outrisk His faithfulness.
Come on.
But I think that would also be true to, like, some areas with friends. Like, obviously there's lines, but to a way. And so with that, I think since you have experiences with this conflict resolution, with a lot of the experiences that the Lord has brought you through, with a lot of the, I'm sure, conversations you've had in the past, because I'm sure that wasn't something that was, like, there at the start, but something that you've grown in, that gives you maybe a subconscious or conscious confidence to then be free to know that, hey, if I do step over, it's like, okay, like, we'll be able to talk this out in a loving way. And I see that also, you haven't met him yet, but one of mine and Chaz's friends, Danny Bryan, he's with Circuit Riders over in LA.
So cool.
He lives in a very unreserved way, which that's how he puts it, is like, instead of freedom, he just says unreserved. But still that same sense of, like, Lord, I just want to hold nothing back from what you want me to do. And with that is because of all this gift of wisdom that the Spirit has given him, but also the ability to take that into conflict resolution. Or if there's anything that does stir up, he's courageous like you are to face that and be like, okay, like, let's talk this out.
So good.
Let's submit this to the Lord and go from there.
Yeah. For whatever reason, people who are watching this that know me, if I'll repost this or whatever, like, they'll see this and there'll be a lot of people watch this and laugh, and some will roll their eyes.
Yeah.
Some will, some know, like, for whatever reason. What's the other gospel, by the way, of 2022? It's the Enneagram. Everybody, it's the gospel of the Enneagram. I'm an 8. I am a challenger.
Okay.
Challengers are the most loved people when they need them, and they're the most hated people when they don't need them. And I say that. I'm sure there's a lot of opinions. Please don't DM these guys or me. I don't care.
We don't care.
Yeah, we don't care. But point being, like, I am a challenger, and it's gotten me into a lot of goodness, and it's gotten me into a lot of difficulty. And I would say my experience in general is that most Christians are not good at confrontation and conflict. And then there's some like me that need to do the opposite. You need to chill. Like, you need to come back. Like, my challenge is to know what's a mountain and what's a molehill. My prayer is that I would get better the older I get of knowing what to raise fuss about, or what to challenge, or what to push, or what to say and what not to say. Yeah. The need that I have is to learn. I need to continue to pray that the God's Spirit would give me a discernment, to have a filter. And I would say that I've just learned through relationships with people. One of my best friends, he'll tell you, like, it's been one of the, probably blessed me the most, because I probably got a lot of, if I'm honest with you, a lot of hurt from this stuff too, because a lot of people have told me, you are conflictual, you are confrontational, you are someone who will have a hard conversation and will not force it, but you'll engage it. Yeah. I get that from Jesus. Like, I hope, maybe I'm off, but here's a guy in the Garden of Gethsemane who, it says, when a whole crowd of soldiers came for him, it says he stepped forward. They said, they're looking for Jesus of Nazareth. And he said, it says he stepped forward. And when it says he came forward, or he stepped forward, depending on your translation, it said the whole legion of soldiers fell. So there was power in him entering into that conflict and not running from it. At the same time, Jesus only describes his heart one time in Scripture, and here's the tension. He describes his heart as gentle and lowly. He describes himself as someone who's kind and approachable. So I want to be more of that part of Jesus, that is gentle and approachable, but unafraid to step forward into conflict, to engage something when I see it, and to hope people will have the conversation. I would say, my experience, most people don't like conflict and they'd rather let it go and they'd rather stuff it down. But I would tell you, my richest relationships, the closest relationships I have, the most meaningful ones, have lasted time, have been the ones who are willing to every single time be willing to engage and enter into hardship, hard, difficult things. And I mean, isn't that like what marriage is too? Like, we don't quit on each other. I mean, why do we only
Thomas, you want to come in here to let us know what marriage is like?
But why do we only practice that, like, I'm not going anywhere mentality in marriage? Why do we wait until 19, 20, if you're in Texas, 20 years, if you're anywhere else, like in the world, like 30 something, like, why do we wait till that moment to throw two people into a house, put them where when two things are close to each other, it causes friction? Why do we wait to practice that in marriage? Like, engage with the people and stop this. Man, Christians especially, we have a hard habit. We have a terrible habit of quitting, writing people off, saying it's easier to find somebody else because there's access to everybody. And I don't want to be that guy, bro. Like, I don't. I want to put up a fight for the things that matter. I'm praying for more discernment. I want more discernment. I can be the first to say, even on this, like, I have failed countless times in my confrontation and conflict.
Same.
But me
in the opposite way, to be honest. Because you know my personality by now, and I'm not really someone who enjoys conflict.
And usually the opposite side, it's a fear of what can happen. Yeah. And most people that engage in conflict with me, that are afraid to, at times, like, they'll tell you they're fearful of what can happen. And I understand that. But I want to be a safe space. I want to be a better person to be a safe space, to sit at a table and say, we can come to the table because we have the same blood in us, and we ought to be the example of how to solve this stuff, and we ought to be the reconcilers and forgivers, and let's deal with it. We don't have to be best friends, but let's deal with it. Let's not let things go unsaid and unchecked. And not everybody always wants to do that. And so,
Yeah.
what does Paul say? In and so as much as it is within me to deal with it. It's up to you. What can you do to your fullest extent?
Yeah,